Do you not think, though, that, I mean, if we could live on our intuition, I mean, that's probably the best way I can express it. Yeah. If we could live from the heart, from the essence, from the soul, then would there really be any negativity?
Yes, I think there would.
How?
Because negativity is a growth tool. So, in a sense...
And negativity is a judgment, of course.
It's a judgment,
I mean, one
of course.
man's negative could be another man's positive.
And it's always positive.
Yeah.
It's always positive.
Yes, I see.
I really enjoy suffering. I really enjoy it. Because it makes me like myself.
Yeah.
I believe if I'm working really hard and I'm suffering for something I'm passionate about, then it makes me like myself. And I fundamentally then have respect for myself. I enjoy eating cake. But, you know, eating cake doesn't make me like myself. And I really hate going to the gym, I have to be honest, but going to the gym makes me like myself.
But that's all ego, though, isn't it? You know, in a sense, Becky. I mean, it's, you know, it's all this image stuff, you know, I've got to be a certain figure, you know, if I eat cake, I'll put on weight. And in a sense, does that really matter at the end of the day?
I think, you know, that the thing with the ego is the ego is like a computer self-understanding program. Now, what's interesting about it is if you imagine, and this is kind of how I see it, that at the beginning of time, if you imagine that there was a great huge mirror, and it was a round mirror, and that mirror had a really crazy thought, which is what if I could experience myself, and it broke into fragments of pieces, and in order to understand what we are, which I believe is an aspect of God, we have to understand what we're not.
Yes.
And the ego is the understanding program to understand what we are by understanding what we're not.
Okay.
So in order for me to kind of say...
So creating the polarity in the sense.
Absolutely, it creates the polarity. So for me to be able to have self-acceptance, it will always be at the level of the ego. So loving myself will be at the level of the ego. Acceptance will be at the level of the ego. Hating myself is at the level of the ego. All of these words, because the wordy, heady thing, not the inner knowing, that's not coming from ego. But there's two forms of intuition, I'll talk about that as well.
Okay.
But the ego-based thought voice in the head that says, you know, it would be really great if you go to the gym and all of this stuff and then you're going to feel good about yourself and you're going to like yourself. Yes, that's all ego. But really... It's still important because as we are removing levels of ego, to remove it all just by saying ego doesn't exist, so then therefore I won't do anything about it, means that the world that we're living in, it's almost like, well, there's no point saving the rainforests, there's no point working for the environment. But actually, if this is a computer programming for self-understanding, then all of these things are very real. On one level, they're very real. So then, therefore, there is a purpose to living them. There is a purpose to it.
Do you buy into this, if you like, belief or philosophy that nothing actually is real? Or nothing that we see with our five senses or see here?
It's a really interesting thing, the idea of non-duality, and it's a little bit like Fight Club, you know, it's like, you know,
yes.
One thing about Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club, you know, it's sort of, it's one of those really bizarre things that you are supposed to not be able to enter into dialogue or communication about it. And I really think that it would take all of us as one, or at least the tipping point due to the law of resonance, to suddenly have the realisation that none of this is actually real. But that's so far down the road, and I actually think that there are baby steps to get to that point of realisation.
So you're saying that this is part of our collective progression, is it, to get to this point? A bit like 2012 and beyond. I'll come back to that because I'd like to ask you something about 2012. But
and I do think that we are really heading towards a shift of consciousness and a tipping point in our own evolution, and I think it's really important that we're going towards that. For me, I feel that the way to open into a more loving vibration and shifting into that kind of awareness doesn't just come from meditation and thinking things in your own mind and being introspective, that it actually comes from being able to see other people as being you, really. Now, so when I was talking just a moment ago...
sorry to interrupt you, I loved, can I just say here, because it really fits, I think, I love that piece in, forgive me, I don't remember which book now it was, but the piece where you talk about see everyone and everything as you. So you talk about, there's me cleaning the windows, there's me driving the Bentley, there's me. I thought that was a beautiful metaphor, you know, of, sorry, forgive me for interrupting you, but I think it fits, doesn't it, with what you've just been saying? I
think it does, because we're not separate, and the minute you start to actually reach out and see other people as being an aspect of you, then you really do start to open up, and you start to remove levels of your own ego as well, because when you start seeing other people doing things, we dehumanize people. We say, oh, I wouldn't do that, so that can't be me. But then at the level of ego, we choose, but the level of consciousness, we're all one. So intuition works in two ways. There's intuition that follows the ego, which actually can lead to paranoia and craziness. Because when you're intuitively picking up other people's ego, you're always coming from the number two listening, which is, what are you going to do? What are you thinking? What are you saying? How are you acting? And how does it affect me? So if you're, say, for example, giving a consultation to somebody when you're coming from ego intuition, you can end up saying a projected thing to your client. So in other words, if your client was going out with a rock performer who takes drugs, and you dated a rock performer who took drugs, and he left you and was awful and had a really terrible time and stole your car, you know, and did something really bad to you, you could project that onto the person, whereas that person who was your client might be the salvation of the rock star, who then goes on to become a spiritual leader and brings about world peace, and you've just really messed up somebody's purpose in a way. So the projection based on intuitive ego, I believe, is very, very dangerous in readings, and really kind of a bit tricky. And for most of us who learn psychical development, we only ever learn to read ego. So we learn to read somebody else's ego, which is interesting, but basically it just makes you hate humanity, because at the level of ego we're all pretty detestable. You know, and quite frankly, if I just thought that that was humanity, I think the best spiritual act I could give would be to annihilate most people, you know, to be one of these crazies, you know, in America with the gun. But that isn't just who we are. We are not just the voice in our head. We are not just our ego. We are also spirit. And the element of us that is spirit, when you intuitively tune into someone's spirit, an amazing thing happens. The first thing is you tune into their spirit, and it's like tuning into yourself. You feel, and your heart opens, and there's this connection that links the two of you. I am always in love with my clients. In the session that we're there, I love them so deeply and so profoundly. Wow, that's great. And if I don't love them, within 5 minutes, I kick them back out of the room. Yeah, I won't work with people I don't love.
And what is that? Is that a feeling, Becky, you get? It's probably a silly question, but
it's like,
how do you know? It is intuitive. It
sounds like a hum.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like, you know how when two people sing together, when two people sing together and make a beautiful tone, that's what it feels like and what it sounds like. Wow. It feels, you know, almost angelic to me. There's something really, really connected, and we can have fun and we have humour and we talk and we're you know, but ultimately I sort of become one with that person as if I'm living that person's life in a way, and so I can see where the emotive is coming from. And of course I am coaching ego. I have to coach ego, but I'm coaching ego into realising that they are divine love. So I'm trying to get the ego to witness something about itself. So when I'm tuning in on that kind of intuitive consciousness level, it's much, much deeper, and they feel that for me, I think, sometimes too, and I've had people say that, and even people say that when I'm giving talks and workshops, that they felt that. So and then it's like this, it does this. You link into that person, it's like you delve into their heart, and then all of a sudden it's like there's a back door in the heart, and it links into everyone else's. And it suddenly feels like the World Wide Web. And I had this happen while I was giving a talk, and I suddenly saw, and they call it the God chip in the back of the head. It was like this lights came on, and everybody became interconnected right the way across the room like a web. And I suddenly was overwhelmed with this realisation that everyone had this unbelievable, unmatched potential to create as God creates, and to love as God loves.